class, style, gravitas, and abs that go on for days. Netflix gave us a second trip to the vampire buffet, so let's enjoy this Aztec Adonis in this episode of Monster Menagerie. Welcome to Monster Menagerie, brought to you by the Paladin Archives. Happy Halloween! You know, it wasn't easy deciding which vampire would get the coveted Halloween spot. There were a lot of strong contenders, but thankfully for me and the algorithm, a brand new Castlevania is out. Now, a lot of you have been asking me, Cran, when are you covering Alucard? Well, here's the issue. Whether you meant this Alucard or this Alucard, I can't do either. This one, spoiler alert, is just actually Count Dracula, and we already did him. The other one is the son of Dracula, but his mother is human. That means he's not technically a vampire. He's a dhampir. But that doesn't mean we're left hungry for vampires in Netflix Castlevania series, because this month, I've cultivated the most prime choice of USDA-approved vampire for your viewing pleasure. Castlevania Nocturne's own Olrox. Before we get too deep in the weeds on this amazing vampire, I want to take a moment to shout out our Discord server. Big thanks to Dev, my mod there, and on Twitch for setting it up. We talk about our videos, our Twitch streams, and of course, the whole world of the Paladin in the books section. Don't forget to check us out on Twitch too. I play games there and occasionally do my vampire research live on stream. We have tons of fun and I'd love to have you join us. Links for everything down in the description. Back to the vampires. If you're new here, my job as a Mason is to collect, maintain, organize, and dispense vital information to paladins in the field as they face off against the worst of the creatures that prowl the night. So, of course, in my free time, I turn my analytical eye to the world of pop culture. From Dracula to Nandor, Marceline to the Count, we've spent this year reviewing some of the most interesting vampires from games, television, and movies. But next month, my friends, is the final vampire of 2023. Why? Because December is when we take all those vampires and stack them up against one another to see which specimen exhibits the most vampiric qualities. If you're part of Discord or follow me on Twitter, you can vote to make your voice heard about which one you think is the best. I'm working on a few surprises for that video too, so keep your eyes peeled. With that done, let's get started. Oh, and fair warning, heavy spoilers ahead for Castlevania Nocturne. So if you haven't watched, be aware. Alright, gimme that Olrox. Olrox was born sometime around the year 1500 AD. Castlevania Nocturne takes place during the French Revolution, and Olrox claims to have been a vampire for about 250 years.
In 250 years, do you know how many vampire hunters have promised to slice me in two?
So it's a bit of a ballpark figure, but that's a pretty good age. I mean, he's not getting close to Count Von Count's 6 million years, but hey, he's definitely getting a senior discount. According to his accounts of watching his people die to European conquerors, that fits him snugly around 1520 or so, when the Spanish Empire invaded and, well, ended the Aztec. We don't get a whole lot about him in the following centuries until he arrives in Boston, Massachusetts during the American Revolution. He met a young man, a Mohican warrior, that fought alongside the Americans, believing that their freedom would also mean freedom for his people. Olrox fell in love. We don't learn the man's name, but Olrox said he had deep roots in the land and forest, and that he burned with a passion that almost made Olrox believe in the cause. Then a Belmont came into his life and did what Belmonts do. kill vampires. With his love dead, he dedicated himself to hunting down Julia Belmont, mother of Richter, the series' main protagonist. At the docks on a cold night, young Richter watched as his mother fought and eventually lost to Olrox. With the young boy frozen in terror, Olrox approached. He spared the child, warning him that one day he would do the same to him. Fast forward a decade or so, and Olrox has made his way to France, just in time for another revolution. Investigating the claims of a vampire messiah, he eventually learned about the blasphemous accord between the church and the minions of Elizabeth Bathory. Most important to fanboys and girls of this series, though, is when he met the warrior monk Mizrak of the Church of St. John's. A little knife play flirting, and soon our Aztec vampire catches a case of the feels for Mizrak. Enough that when the big moment comes, Olrox betrays his alliance with Elizabeth not once, but twice. Despite this, shall we say, strained relationship with Richter Belmont, he ends up pretty squarely on their side by the end of the first season. There's no way this isn't getting a second one. Vampire representation, tragic backstory, oozing charisma, easily the new fanship. Man, if Olrox doesn't win the most vampiric vampire, he's a shoo-in for straight up most popular. Olrox, as I said before, oozes charisma. There's a tendency in media for depictions of Native Americans to go hard on the warrior stoicism, in touch with nature, compelled by honor. They didn't fall into that trope here because Olrox, while not exactly excitable, is filled with a true vampiric charm. The vampire Lestat would recognize the demeanor, the gravitas that Olrox exudes. He is comfortable as he is, where he is.
Vampire lioness, she who mauls, the messiah of...
Yes, charmed to meet you.
He is a passionate lover when someone manages to actually capture his heart. When his love fell to Julia Belmont, he hunted her down to exact revenge. But the fact that he stopped there when Richter was easy pickings says so much about him. He lost someone dear to him, dear enough that he could not let it go unavenged. But his hatred stopped there. The logical thing would be to finish the Belmont line off and take out the young Richter, but instead, he spared him. If you listen to him, he doesn't actually challenge Richter to grow strong and face him later. He's not trying to build a proper foe or give him a sporting chance. I think Olrox is simply just aware that Richter will want the same revenge that he wanted. He understands that feeling. And while he doesn't necessarily hold any ill will toward the child, he also won't let his life end to him. There's a nobility in that, I think. And that's really where the whole gravitas of Olrox stems from, as far as the show goes. He's not afraid to do what he thinks needs to be done, and he has no great desire to visit pain and suffering on others. After all, he's lived through that more than any man should. The weight of his people's genocide is a heavy burden he carries with him through eternity. It shapes his very core. When he does meet the young Belmont again, years later, he makes no effort to fight him. One might expect that this is the moment where Richter attempts to get revenge, but instead he, understandably, flees from the man that murdered his mother. And Olrox, with all the power in this situation, the ability to catch up to him in a heartbeat, lets him go. He's a very observant man. He takes his time understanding the situation between the church and the servants of Elizabeth Bathory. He's confident in his own abilities, knowing exactly how powerful he is. When he finally meets Countess Bathory herself, his demeanor slowly changes over the course of the encounter.
Her magnificence has heard much about you.
I'm flattered. For a god to have heard of me.
I told you to bow.
He goes from having to be told repeatedly to bow in her presence to begrudgingly bending the knee. He needs only one conversation with her to understand that he cannot oppose her alone, and that any acts of resistance or rebellion are better saved for another day. Most of all, though, through his whirlwind relationship with Mizrak, we see that his heart is not hardened, not sealed off by the pain he suffered. Despite his protest to the contrary with the monk, Olrox can't stand to see any harm come to Mizrak. What does this mean for his interaction with paladins? Well, I'm not taking into account his considerable power, yet. Just based on his personality, I think negotiation is possible. Maybe. He certainly wouldn't acknowledge the Order's authority, though. Gods and kings are trivial, meaningless concepts to him, and he has a disdain for those in charge, most especially the aristocracy.
I prefer my blood blue.
I could see Olrox agreeing to work with the Order in the right circumstances. At least, so long as it didn't interfere with his plans. But this isn't a series about how the Order makes friends with monsters. Let's take a look at what responding paladins might have to deal with if Olrox decides to pull a repeat performance of his dance with Julia.
Glory be to God.
Like most of the vampires in the Castlevania series, Olrox is quite powerful. At a glance, he might be the most dangerous vampire so far, but let's not commit to that until we've had a chance to analyze his abilities one by one. First, of course, he is insinuated to have the standard array of vampire powers: speed, strength, durability, and of course, immortality. I'll grant him the last one, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't confirm the rest. Let's start with his speed. Finding an example of him displaying speed beyond human capability was difficult. His battle with Julia Belmont, his tussle with Mizrak, he didn't actually move any faster than a well-trained human can. What about strength? Again, there's not much to go on. The most blatant show of strength we have is him tossing Mizrak across the Abbey garden with one hand. Well, the average human male weighs about 200 pounds or about 90 kilograms. Tossing that one-handed is certainly impressive. For comparison, the Thomas Inch dumbbell is a legendary dumbbell that weighs in at 172 pounds or about 78 kilograms. For years, it remained undefeated, no man able to lift it one-handed, until strongman Mark Henry finally did it for the first time on June 2nd, 2002. According to the scene in the Abbey, Olrox could toss the Thomas Inch dumbbell like he was playing cornhole. So that's it then. Super strength? Well, maybe not. Keep in mind, Olrox didn't actually lift Mizrak off his feet, nor do we see exactly how far Mizrak goes. It's completely possible Mizrak just stumbled a meter or two. Why do I propose this? Because in all of his fights with mortals, Olrox likes to get up close and personal. Observe his fight with Julia Belmont. They lock weapons, a stalemate, even for a moment. Back in the Abbey with Mizrak, we see the warrior monk is able to turn the tables on Olrox just moments before the aforementioned cornhole toss. Furthermore, when pulling Mizrak out of the fight with Elizabeth Bathory, Olrox has to drag him on foot. While in the mist form, the two of them become lighter than air, but the moment they're back in physical form, Olrox actually has to strain to hold Mizrak. Well, it's completely possible that Olrox was being gentle, only using the bare minimum strength he needed to restrain his monk lover, but I don't know. I feel like if he could easily restrain a 200-pound Mizrak, why couldn't he restrain a 170-pound woman like Julia? After all, he had a reason to go easy on Mizrak, but motivation to utterly destroy her. Durability, we have a lot more to go off of. In his fight with Julia Belmont, we see him whipped, stabbed, burnt, and otherwise just have, like, the entire Castlevania weapon arsenal thrown at him in one go. And when it was over, he was clean and unharmed. I suspect his ability to shift from form to form, vampire to dragon that is, allows him time to recover. There's certainly an implied healing ability in there, given the amount of damage Julia did and the lack of any evidence for it when speaking to her son. With those out of the way, let's take a closer look at his demonstrated abilities. My personal favorite, Ethereal Skulls. With the snap of his fingers, Olrox opens a dark portal and casts a host of spectral skulls towards his enemies. It seems that each one is able to target a different foe, making this a very useful skill. Now, I'm not sure what kind of damage to expect from a ghost skull, but it seemed to do quite well against Countess Bathory's minions in the last big fight of Season 1. His most useful and most displayed power has to be his vampire mist. I don't recall if any of the vampires in the original Netflix Castlevania utilized this, but if not, they should have. When in danger, needing to hide or move fast, or perhaps just when he wants to be a badass, Olrox possesses the ability to transform into a mist, a power we haven't seen since episode 1 with Dracula himself. It appears that damage is still possible in this form, as when he's attacked, he still moves to dodge. This form gives him superior maneuverability though, concealment, and gravitas that Lestat himself would have to acknowledge. Arguably his strongest ability is his power to change forms into an Aztec dragon, something very reminiscent of Quetzalcoatl. He gains flight, some lightning powers, which also appear to be usable in his mist form, and I would imagine a significant boost in his strength. Again though, that last one is hard to measure. Phantom skulls, mist, lightning, and dragon morphing, quite the bevy of hunter-killing abilities. But what about what makes him tick? Yes, fangs. It's a running joke by now, but yes, our boy Olrox definitely has some chompers on him. He also sports some pointed ears and just the most alluring yellow-green eyes. His pupils are vertically oriented, like a cat's, which in nature is indicative of a ground-level predator. The vertical slits help with picking up light between blades of grass and other plants. Considering his Aztec heritage and the prevalence of serpents and dragons in their mythos, I might venture to guess that a serpent form is either in his repertoire or was at one point. It's inferred that all vampires in Castlevania are weak to sunlight, as the main plot of the season is Countess Bathory literally blocking out the sun. He seems to handle indirect sunlight without an issue, as evidenced by him fighting with Mizrak in the Abbey's garden shadows, and opening his window at the inn to watch that same monk walk away in the morning. He needs to feed on blood, but his reliance on it, his hunger for it, is unclear. At the very least, we certainly didn't see him jonesing for blood. He doesn't seem to need a coffin, as the room's bed sufficed just fine for him and Mizrak. Religious symbols, holy ground, and other common deterrents don't seem to hold any sway over him. When he changes, he becomes a large, dragon-like creature, very reminiscent of creatures in Aztec mythos. When in his mist form, he seems to be able to either completely disappear or present his general outline in said mist. Not much to work with if we're trying to exploit some weakness. Let's see just how deadly this all is when you put it together. For those that are new to the series, part of my job is assigning a paladin threat level to potential hostiles our agents may face. A paladin might call in a sighting of a vampire or a vesper, after which it's my job to take the observations we have of it, do my research on the species, and then get back to the paladin with a threat level and any pertinent information they may need to handle it. The scale goes from 1 to 10, but it's heavily weighted toward the bottom. That is to say, a threat level 2 isn't twice as dangerous as a 1. A 1 on the scale might be, an infestation of blood eels in your plumbing. The little guys waiting for their prey to present their, vulnerable side to them. Then bam! Chomp and drink. A single paladin with a special kit can eradicate them in an afternoon. But a 10? A 10 would be like, careless scientists disturbing the delicate veil that separates our realm from Kal Atha, the realm of those who sleep, awakening them and drawing their 1,000 eyes toward a reality they had not known to exist, but whose very presence stands as an offense that must be remedied by a bleeding, a draining of all life, all breath, all blood, and all thought from every sentient creature on the planet until nothing is left, allowing them to absorb the tattered wreckage of this world into their plane of torture and chaos. That's a 10. Looking at Olrox, he certainly has reason to rank up there. He seems to be able to shake off damage from fire, ice spikes, and whip slashes without too much trouble. He's not terribly fast, as Julia was able to stab him several times in hand-to-hand combat. His flight, both as a dragon and a mist, make him a definite pain to capture, though. My initial thoughts are that he's at least as strong as, say, Morbius or Domitresk. But then again, a single trained monster hunter held her own against him. It seems evident to me that Julia's loss was due to Richter being in danger, as she managed to kill Olrox's lover before that. Between that and Mizrak showing that hand-to-hand combat is viable under the right conditions, I feel like he may not be as dangerous as I initially thought. He's definitely deadly, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to shortchange him on anything, but whether he hesitated to kill Richter because of his own convictions, or he simply failed because he was unable, the point remains there are ways to fight him and come out alive in a one-on-one encounter. And considering paladins don't handle most cases on their own, or rather they're not supposed to, I can certainly imagine conditions where paladins can either contain, or in drastic cases, eliminate him. We have no idea what bullets will do to him, but I can't imagine that if he's getting hit by ice and whips, that high-caliber ammunition won't hit him, and do much more damage. Yeah, he's by no means a pushover. He's got gravitas like no one's business. But the fact that he can be pressured at all in hand-to-hand combat means I'm giving Olrox a paladin threat level of 3. He's deadly. You'll need the whole parish. But it can be done without having to call in the big guns. Daylight seems to be a concern for Olrox, even if he's confident in his abilities to handle it.
The sun will rise soon. Shouldn't you get back to the chateau?
He also seems more than capable of being hurt, at least in his vampire form. Once again, assuming he's not open to negotiation, I feel like if we dispatch a full parish of paladins, like 4 to 8, they should be able to handle him. Strike in the day to limit his retreat options. Try to find an enclosed area, someplace smaller to restrict his movements. In the big battle at the Abbey, he's able to move freely in his mist form, and in the open streets against Julia, he was able to take his dragon form. I say try to catch him in his hotel room. Now, I'm not sure of any reliable way to harm or capture a vampire while they're in their mist form. I wonder if an air purifier or a vacuum could be of use? Sadly, we just don't have the research on that to risk it in actual confrontation, though I know at least a couple of paladins that would probably try it. Firearms are definitely a go-to. He's slow enough to engage in hand-to-hand combat, so hitting him with a gun shouldn't be an issue. Might have to have an anti-heretic or anti-freak take the lead to engage in said combat, at least to distract him. Support groups can carefully open fire from a safe distance. Even in the dragon form, I'm not too worried about his resisting a good rifle or pistol. Honestly, it's the mist I keep coming back to. Slipping through a window or a vent could easily provide him with an avenue for escape, and once eyes were off him, he'd be virtually impossible to track through conventional means. So, I guess we'd better put a bullet in him before he chooses to get all misty on us. Full parish dispatch. Recommend anti-heretic, anti-freak tactics to occupy the target. Heavy vestments to resist stab and slashing attacks. Track and isolate target. Wait for optimal conditions. Attempt to restrict avenues of escape and confront in areas of restricted movement. At least one paladin recommended to engage in person with cover fire and backup from the rest of the team. Blessed manacles for capture. Blades or incendiary ammunition for eradication. Well, what do you think? Did I give Olrox a fair shake? Was there something I missed? I really like his character, and in general, I really like the new season of Castlevania. He may not be our deadliest vampire yet, but something tells me he's definitely in the running for most vampiric vampire. Speaking of which, it's almost time. Once next month's video hits, the polls will be open, and I need your help to decide which vampire we reviewed is the best. We're looking at their charm/allure, their danger level, their bloodlust, and their abilities. I'm even going to be tossing in a few honorable mentions for the vampires I just couldn't get to this year. Swing by our Discord or hit me up on Twitter if you want to learn more about voting on this most important of all subject matters, who is the coolest vampire. Link down in the description. While you're at it, don't forget to check out our Twitter, and if you want to see me stumble my way through video games, hit us up on Twitch. We have so much fun there, and I'd love to see you join us. Please, if you would, hit that like button and click subscribe to make sure you don't miss any future episodes of Monster Menagerie. Clicking the bell icon helps seal the deal, so make sure you get that too. And with all that, I think we're done. I have to get going. Maddie said they're having a spicy wing competition down in the mess hall, and well, I'm probably not going to get any, but I'm a mason, so they'll probably want me to clean up after the losers. I need to make myself scarce. Until next time, happy Halloween, and don't forget, keep your eyes peeled. You never know what's out there. Best line in the whole season, Drolta Duentes, Episode 4. Every orifice I possess has teeth.